Lovely. So, welcome everybody to today's Safety Roundtable session, where we're going to be doing a bit of stargazing, forecasting, uh, predicting, prognosticating, whatever the words are, about the future, and specifically thinking about what's the role of the safety professional going to look like in 2035, so 10 years from now. Um, and there will be a bonus prize for everybody that attends the webinar in 2035, at the first Wednesday of June, where we look back at this and see how we got on. No, I'm just kidding about that, but hopefully we'll still be going with the Safety Roundtable then, and the podcast. We're a few years in now, so we've got some good momentum. If you haven't been to one of these before, very much designed to be interactive. So I'm going to put out some ideas and then would love to get your feedback, thoughts, comments, etc., experiences. And we'll see if we can make this a valuable session. Welcome to Shisu from Nigeria. Great to be here. Thank you for joining. Tend to have people from all around the world, so it's good to see you on this session and to give a global perspective. So the goal for today, from my perspective, is for us to have this interactive session and to kind of almost build out a vision of what safety professionalism could and should look like in 2035. So thinking about where we are now and what the world is going to be like in 2035, and therefore what's the requirement going to be on us within the safety profession to be doing a good job then, as we hopefully are now. From your perspective, really encourage you to get involved, come with an open mind. Everyone's opinion, everyone's thoughts are very much welcome. There's no wrong answers here, because none of us know the future. So we're all just having a bit of fun, but trying to work together to figure out, what's this safety profession going to look like in the future, and then how do we respond to that? So the takeaways from today will be: here's where we think we're going, but then also what should we do on that basis? Where should we be putting our time, effort, energy, investment to ensure that by 2035, whatever that world is going to look like, we're ready for it. So just to start with, in the chat, and if you're listening or listening to or watching this on recording, fire it into the chat anyway. If you're watching on YouTube, for example, just to sort of get a sense of where we are and get some context, I'd love for you to answer these couple of questions. So, firstly, what one word do you associate with the future of safety? So, could be any word, an adjective, a noun. But think about a word that you would associate with the future of safety. So hopefully you've been thinking a bit about this topic before we started the session, and you've got some thoughts in mind already. So AI has come up as a suggestion fairly swiftly, as I thought that it would. Sustainability, health, integrated. I like that one. So some good suggestions coming through. Automation, interesting. We'll talk about that. Engagement from Gareth. Yeah, I love that one as well. Second question, what one word describes how you feel about the future of safety? So this is going to be more of an adjective, I guess. What do you feel about the future? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Are you concerned? Are you, let's see what people are coming up with. Hopeful, yeah. Interested, positive, optimistic. Red tape. More red tape. That's an interesting one. Do we think there's going to be more red tape? Excitement. Okay, so we're coming at this. There's a bit of concern, but a lot of optimism and excitement as well within the room. So Good to know where we're coming from, because I think that sets the context for the discussion. So I thought we'd start by looking at some of the trends and some of the potential game changers that might affect where we're going to be in 10 years' time. Now, if we had run this session in 2015 and we'd said, what's the world of safety going to look like in 2025? The word AI probably wouldn't have come across anyone's desk. Um, so, 10 years is a long time. But there are some big trends that have been happening. So, uh, over to you guys to if you want to come in and chat about something and share some thoughts, just go to reactions, raise your hand, and I'll call you up to speak. If you've got any thoughts on trends or developments that are going to reshape the profession over the coming 10 years. A few thoughts from me. Um, ESG mandates. So, is there going to be much more focus on ESG, and what effect will that have on where the safety profession needs to be to keep up with that change by 2035? A couple of things on AI. AI replacing workers. Will the role of occupational health and safety um, be the same in a factory now, sorry, in 10 years' time versus now, if AI manages to replace a lot of the physical humans doing jobs? AI in the space of predictive analysis and predictive analytics, mental health as a safety pillar. These are all some trends, some of which we've spoken about in safety roundtables and on the podcast over recent months. But these are all big things that, I sort of feel will affect where we get to by 2035. And the last one I thought about was the rise of what I've called citizen safety expectations. And by that I mean that there, if you think about the environment, you have a backlash against companies that are seen as greenwashing. And then on the flip side of that, you have a support, an advocacy, um, a following, an affection for organizations, brands that are doing what people perceive as the right thing in the word in the world of environmental work. So it'll be interesting to see whether, and I think we saw a bit of this after COVID, um, we have the same kind of reaction in the world of safety. So are people's expectations around safety potentially going to rise, and then we're going to have to rise to meet those as organizations? Anybody with any thoughts on any of those or others, do come and chime in. And maybe you could let me know your thoughts on which of these trends excite you, maybe which of these worry you. Some of these you could see as being very positive, others you might think are a bit more negative. How prepared are we, or how prepared are you? Think about it personally. How prepared are you to tackle mental health in more detail, in more depth? How prepared do you think you are and and our colleagues in the safety profession are at doing more work around predictive analytics and using AI? Are we are we going to become prompt engineers rather than safety professionals? And an interesting question to think about throughout today is, are we making the news or are we reporting on the news? In other words, are we shaping the future, or are we reacting to some of these trends and just trying to catch up? Gareth, you've got your hand up. How are you doing? Oh, I think you're muted.
Yes, I
There you go.
need some AI to see when I'm starting to talk. Nice to join you again. Yeah, on the ESG mandates. So a previous director of mine, current company, uh, when he left, he was HSE director, and he did believe that HSE would move towards ESG in the future. And he saw um, an opportunity to move more into the ESG side, and thought it was really important to do that.
Yeah.
Uh, because 5 years down the line, Gareth, do you want to be reporting to an ESG manager or director, or do you want to shape that conversation? Um, and we don't have a crystal ball, and it's really hard to see into the future. But certainly, we know things will always change because things always do change. But there's always a need for safety advisors. Uh, but our role will be modified over the years. So I think it's an important one to consider, especially for people starting out on the safety journey. Maybe for those who are near retirement in the next 5, 10 years, might not be as critical. In terms of AI, well, AI has been on board for a number of years.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff out there, so let's not pretend it's something new and something scary. It's been around for a long time, but there's much more visibility of it now, and much more we can do with it.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to be scared of it. If we're scared of it and push it away, well, we're really limiting ourselves in terms of our employability and what we do. But we've got to be careful. Don't spend the whole bank balance on AI. Use the bits that make our job easier. But as a professional, you've got to be there to critique what the AI does and use it to our benefit.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Gareth, about just picking up on the ESG piece, the challenge of adding more stuff on? Because I think that's one of the difficulties, isn't it? When you start to think about we now need to be overseeing mental health, we now need to be overseeing environmental, we now need to be overseeing um, quality, or whatever it is. I think that's one risk factor, isn't it? That if we sort of keep bundling too much into our in trays, we spread ourselves too thin, and then are we having the impact that we want to have?
Yeah, and certainly I've been there before where because you're competent in a role, you look at more things added. And then you've got your balancing so many plates that some of us you need to run an awful lot harder to keep the plates in the air. Um, with HSE, the E at the end already stands for environmental. And we sometimes don't do an awful lot on it in our roles, depending on what companies we work for. Um, yeah, there's a real challenge in taking on too much. Will ESG be the next big thing in terms of our roles? I don't know, but I want to be prepared for it. I certainly think what you're um, talking about today, we need to reflect on where we are in our career, what we're doing, and are we going to put ourselves in the best place? Sometimes you need to take on extra roles and responsibilities to be equipped for the future. So we can't shy away from it. We've got to manage our workload. In terms of mental health, it's such a massive topic nowadays, and rightfully so. Like I'm trained as a mental health first aider, but I will say it's just a first aider. That's all I am. I'm not a mental health professional. And we do promote mental health quite heavily in our company. But I always say for people coming in, once you start to share your thoughts and concerns with others, you take a big bit of that workload away, those concerns away. And the mental health, some of it's just sharing in what we do. But I look for now, as a primary school teacher, and we often have conversations about where our next tranche of workers are coming from. And the new generation of 15, 16-year-olds on social media, they don't have the same resilience as what we have. They have different life experiences. My wife was away last week on a sports camp with the kids, as it says, Gareth, it's not resilience we see now. From being away, it's reinforced that these children don't know how to fail.
Yeah.
And failing is such a bad thing for them. Being second or third place in a race, not getting those grades in exam, and the parents parent differently from what I did as a parent, what my parents did. And that all feeds into the mental health environment. I've sort of waffled a bit there, Christian.
No,
I'd
no,
say
it's fine.
some of
The point about the races really resonated with me actually. I've got two boys and they both had their sports days before half term, and one of them came fourth and was distraught, and the other one came third and was over the moon because he got a medal.
yeah,
Didn't mind if it was a gold, silver, or bronze. He just thought he was good going to get a medal. So
yeah. All these things come into play. I've done quite a lot of sports coaching as well before. I'm seeing how we prepare and how we feel. It's really important, but seeing that it's okay to fail. If people bring a new project and work, are we hitting the pillars of safety and quality?
Mhm.
Well, we are. And so that project you're thinking, Jim, like, I know it's not going to work, but it's not unsafe. It's not causing a quality issue. Go and try it and let people bring these things in. It's okay to fail, but we've got to try these things, look at new things. I think we're, from what I've said there, we're going to be taking on more in the future.
Yeah,
It's inevitable, I think.
yeah, I agree with you there. Andrew, you got your hand up. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. I'll just lower my hand. I've only got another 9 minutes, but I agree with Gareth. I think a lot of the routine will get automated as part of the AI and development. So I think that where we'll see the health and safety professional is more focused on new stuff that's coming in, or perhaps I used automation rather than AI in mine. It's maybe a bit sectory, but I think robotics will replace a lot of the hands-on work that teams do in my sector. So all of a sudden it will be about automation from the point of view of both the sort of administrative back office style items, but also in terms of automation, in terms of delivery. So I'm very much with Gareth in terms of, therefore, the health and safety role will far more be connected with the mental health of the people involved in the business and how those changes, because these are significant changes and people are really frightened of these. And will it happen in 10? Maybe not in 10, but these things are going to creep into the larger organizations, and that will filter down. So I do think, whether it's ESG or whatever ESG becomes, because it'll probably become something else then. But the route to, I guess, I think that health and safety professionals will be more involved in automation investment decisions based on thematic analysis that comes out of AI and advice, and then probably more connected with the mental welfare, the mental health and safety of the individuals involved in the activities, whatever they may be in organizations at that time. A lot of the technology that's coming through at the minute will revolutionize the sector I'm in. Now that we're moving away from sort of mowers that are driven around, have to have a perimeter wire. We've now got ones that can be controlled by geographical technology, and it's the same with tree work. So I think as these things come through and automated driving comes through, there will be lower levels of stress. There'll still be, I think, reactive repairs that need to be done on machines, etc. But it'll be, the scheduling of that, the knowledge when people arrive on site be much more straightforward. Maybe the spare parts are there before the person who's come to fit the spare part, etc. I think all those things in the next 10 years will start to really happen. Maybe drone avoidance might be one of the key issues for health and safety professionals. I don't know. It's a bit facetious, that comment, but I do think it will migrate in that way. And I think the professional of the future will have to be one who is, Gareth, who is resilient, maybe as well to those changes, and is able to deal with that. So I think there'll be a lot of focus from health and safety individuals to be taking people along those pathways, helping with those pathways, and identifying how people will cope with that. Firms will change, and I think we've seen the impact of large organisations and jobs for life being replaced, and how much pressure and stress that puts on people who are really worried financially. And I think so there's a lot of stuff like that'll happen in terms of maybe a bit of a merging with HR in terms of skill sets. But equally, that would be sort of my take on some of the changes that I would expect to see. But I think it's very optimistic, and I think the workplace will be, at least physically, be much safer.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you for both of you for sharing your views. And actually, you pushed me nicely into a segue there, Andrew, of what skills are we going to need on the basis of those trends. So again, you've mentioned a couple of things. So's Gareth. Please do feel free, either in the chat or if you want to kind of unmute and come and chat this through as well. Get involved and share your thoughts. But a few thoughts from me. Being more tech literate, so the ability of us to focus more and do more with tech, data storytelling. I think this is going to be a really big area for us to focus on when it comes to influencing and getting the investment that we need to continue to improve on safety outcomes. We're going to have more and more data. We're going to be exposed to all sorts of data sets that we maybe didn't even think existed before. And as Andrew just said, a lot of this will be done, analyzed with AI, but actually then it's like, okay, we've got the data, we've got some insights from it. How do we tell that story to influence and get the outcomes that we want? Systems thinking, strategic influence, another couple of, I think, key skills that we need to be working on. And then, as Andrew said there, thinking about the sort of HR way of thinking. How do we team up with, in a sense, AI and other technology? How do we collaborate better with our colleagues in other parts of the business to ensure that we achieve the safety outcomes that we want? Anything from the perspective of skills? I had an interesting conversation with recently on the podcast where we were talking about the potential of a skills gap, and that was based on kind of where we are now. But this is a whole new range of skills that we're talking about here. So, does anything here excite you? Does anything here worry you about we do a lot of work in the leisure sector, and when people sign up to be lifeguards, they don't realize that actually a large proportion of their job is cleaning. You know, when you signed up to be a health and safety professional, did you think you'd be having to think about systems thinking and data storytelling? Maybe you did, but maybe you didn't. Is there anything here that sort of worries you a little bit? Thanks, Andrew. Yeah. Thank you for joining in and taking part. How well are we doing with these skills now? So we recently did a survey, and the uptake of common safety technology was still very, very low, comparatively. So, does that mean therefore that we're not as fluent with technology as a profession as we perhaps could or should be? It would seem to suggest that. And then I suppose any other thoughts around, how can we start building these skills? So, the reason I host sessions like this is to try and get people thinking about different topics and exploring new ideas. What else can we do to try and build these skills? William.
Yeah, Christian, afternoon everyone. I think we have a real not challenge, but I think it's important with all of these skill sets, qualifications. We're all probably more than most, got 50,000 different letters after your name and all this great stuff, which absolutely shows and proves competence. But it's really important how we actually deliver on the competence as well, and how we make sure that our knowledge and what we're saying is communicated to a wide variety of audiences. And I guess whether these new emerging technologies or emerged technologies with AI and etc., we need to make sure still the person that is, very old phrase, but at the coal face, absolutely understands what we mean and what we're talking about. And I just think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get excited by all this technology, and obviously, if you're working in one of these organizations that is either implementing it or is obviously making, selling, distributing it, then of course you're going to be very excited about it. But um, the if you go out into the wide world and you speak to um, people in throughout a range of different places and stages of life and roles and so on and so forth, it's still amazing how so many people are not exposed to this stuff at all. They may have heard of it, they don't even really know what AI is. So you're absolutely right that we can't forget that part of our role, a key part of our role, is that sort of engagement piece, isn't it? And in getting that message to the right people to help them to keep themselves and other people safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. By the way, I was in Venice last week, and if you've never been to, I'd never been to Venice before, but we saw some of your colleagues who obviously in Venice you don't have a delivery van, you have a delivery boat, so that was really
Absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Martin, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to quickly pick up on the point you were talking about then. In the next 10 years, there's going to be a hell of a lot of invisible integration. We already alluded to the fact about sensors and cameras and digital data and storytelling. And I think from a safety professional's point of view, I think we all already agree there's so many different software packages that we use out there. The actual technology there for health and safety persons growing. When you start having a factory that's got sensors and CCTV cameras all over the place, great, but no engineers to fix them. But there's going to be people that are going to have to understand, read, and disseminate that information to be able to share with the wider board. And that is a skill set that this change in technology that's going to force upon us all. And I'm not being strange here, but I know a lot of health and safety guys, individuals, so let's be politically correct here, and they're not the most techie of people, to be honest with you. And I feel that moving forward over the next 10 years, this integration, this digital literacy, for means of the words, is something that we've really got to look at in more detail. And that I just want to put that on the table. Those who have not even opened up AI, or those that are still struggling getting their head around using Zoom and emails, are going to find it very, very difficult when you start having to investigate large amounts of video data and sensor data that this is going to bring into the workplace.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thank you for raising that. And I agree that, most people who come into this exciting, crazy, challenging, interesting world of health and safety are heart, they do it for a sort of heart-centered reason. They do it because, it's when you wake up in the morning and you know that what you're doing is keeping people safe, then that gives you that drive and determination, and it's a great thing and a lovely thing to do. But the way to achieve that often is to be heart-centered with other people. So it's not about the tech and the data and the analytics and all of that sort of stuff. It's actually about engaging with people, isn't it? And um, explaining and influencing and helping and commiserating and all these other great things that we have to do. And I do think you're right that there is that gap. I suppose the interesting question would be, what can we do to try and fill that? Do we think that, something like NEBOSH, those types of qualifications need to change and be more focused on some of these aspects? Should we be doing stuff around organizations like IOSH, should they be doing like digital literacy courses and things like that? I mean, any thoughts on that from anybody? Um,
I'm not thinking that it's going to be the likes of IOSH that's going to help that. It's going to have to be the universities.
yeah, yeah.
So I think we need to rethink, especially over the next 10 years. I'm a young man. I'm not going to be worried about it in 10 years, but I am living and breathing it now currently, and I'm seeing that huge gap within organisations that don't have that literacy in place. Not even when we start looking at health and safety, I suspect might change and become more predictive rather than reactive, especially with all of this data. And that's going to change the way that we approach the industry quite considerably over the next 10 years. And that's not even talking about the ethics and liabilities that's associated with that. And just to add a nice final one in there, how are you going to deal with your AI safety partners? Because I don't think the consultancy model that we're all very familiar with is going to change as well. We're going to be working with AI partners, and how that's going to be integrated and how that's going to work is going to make it a very interesting time. I wish I was 17 coming into the industry because I think it's really exciting times, but there's some huge changes ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Andrew.
Hey, good day. Yeah, I find it interesting all about the learning part of this and the prep and the turn. I'm not sure when it comes to engineers, programmers, how much training and how much education there is on the safety needs of stuff. I've worked in North America for a while. I know a lot of times when they do millwrights or trades or whatever it is, there's a very small element of safety in that program. So if you think of people programming or building robots and stuff, I was actually in a meeting about manufacturing CE stamps and stuff and engineering requirements for producing equipment. And it sort of inches onto that, prevention when they're manufacturing or building this equipment is interesting. I've actually got a family member who's doing some work with the fire departments at the moment. And he's very tech driven and worked in sort of various industries. And he's come down and he's now dealing with boots on the ground in commander level at fire stations and seeing the different levels of interaction and acceptance of IT and automation in their world. Big barriers as far as resistance goes. And I find it a lot of time, it's difficult when you're looking at IT and iPads and stuff, whether we turn into a tick box relationship of what we're doing or whether it's a functional, useful relationship we have with these devices. When I see the amount of stuff we can do, just take a photo and tick it, where does this information go and how do we make that information useful to people? So, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is a big culture shift, isn't it? That he's dealing with. So hopefully, he gets on well with that one. There's a good comment in the chat here. Martin's comment: "I wish I was 17 again. I think if we were all 17, we'd be upskilling ourselves better." Agree with that fully. But I would say, there's no reason then that we can't be upskilling ourselves now. There are, lots and lots of things out there that can help with certainly with like the AI stuff. It's a rapidly revolving world, but there's lots and lots of training and skills that we can learn as part of it. So if we accept that things are changing, I think we've all agreed that things are changing. And that the role of the safety professional is going to evolve. What are some of the things that we're going to need to let go of? What are the tasks that maybe we even enjoy doing or we have to do that we won't be doing anymore, and we need to let go of them to evolve? Any thoughts on that? So, a couple of things here that I think this new world in 10 years' time will probably see the end of, or hopefully may see the end of in some of these cases. Generic training. So I think there's, in the world of marketing, there is now the ability to be hyper targeted with messages, emails, texts, Even you can sort of create bespoke landing pages for people. So if you click on a link, it goes to a landing page that's designed for you. And if I click the same link, it goes to a landing page designed for me. So I think moving away from things being generic will be a shift that does happen. Um, uh, William said using paper. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's not going to be much on paper in 10 years. I'm going to be harking back to when I used a fountain pen at school, which I still do even now a little bit, but I'll definitely be doing it more in 10 years. On the same sort of lines, I think these kind of one size fits all controls. So I think we can do better than that with the more data that we have. So in my world, when I sort of get introduced to or start dealing with large organizations, excuse me, I tend to find that they have very generic slips, trips, and falls control measures in place. So, you might be, let's say you're a supermarket, you've got distribution centers, you've got offices, you've got production areas, you've got front of house areas where people are shopping. And actually, you've got a single piece of paper or two pieces of paper saying this is how we deal with slips, trips, and falls. I think actually the expectation, the requirement, um, is going to move on, and we won't be able to sort of be getting away with that. The focus on lagging indicators. Hopefully, people have mentioned a few people already about being more predictive. So maybe we can move away from really sort of obsessing about lagging indicators and maybe thinking more about some predictive analysis and leading indicators. It's what I've termed paper-based compliance rituals. We've sort of touched on a bit. And also, I think blame-based investigation. So again, in my world, someone falls over and hurts themselves. Often we jump to blaming that person. Someone lifts something and they hurt their back. Often we jump to blaming that person. I think with the more analytics, the more data, the more insights and knowledge we've got, I think we'll see a shift away from those. And thanks, Graham, for agreeing with the points, and thanks, Jordan, for joining us down in Australia. So yes, it's getting late, as you say there. So jump off and catch up on the rest on the recording. Some of those things you might think are positive. Some of them you might think are less positive, but just a few thought things that I think are going to be happening. Andrew.
The last point there, the blame-based investigations, is an interesting one because that's a cultural thing, really. Because whenever you're doing an investigation, you're looking for a reason or something that didn't an outcome and why that outcome came out. So I think on that one, it should be just a standard, not to point fingers. There may be a human cause to it as a error or unwanted attitude or behavior there at some point, which is I don't know, what percent of it maybe. But again, yeah, the blame thing is, if you look at automation and stuff, you're looking for maybe a code change or a parameter that's wrong rather than a behavior or a person, which is not much different from what we do now, I guess, in my terms. So yeah, the blame one, I think, is one, it's a constant learning, I think, rather than just a new one.
Yeah. I think it's about having more, having a better ability to, with all the data and all the technology and so on and so forth, to analyze things better, I suppose, to use very simple language. So we've got more information that will be at our fingertips. We've got more analytics, etc., and therefore, don't get me wrong. Sometimes, of course, there is human error in things when incidents happen. But I think if we can capture and harness all those data points better, then I think we've got a greater chance of really figuring out, rather than jumping to the sort of simple conclusion that sometimes people do about human error. Perhaps we can go just that little bit further into figuring out some of these root causes a bit better. And again, I think, a key theme that I've tried to position throughout today is what more can we do to help each other? So, talking about it like this in this open platform, I think is a great way of getting people thinking and preparing and pondering on, what they can do better, differently, etc., etc. But is there something more formally that we could or should be doing? Is something we really should be thinking about as well. So before we wrap up, does anybody have any really bold, disruptive, brave predictions for what the world of safety might look like in 10 years' time? Anybody that, this has got the juices flowing in their brains and they're thinking, oh, what about this? What about that? Um, I'll give you one from my side. I could foresee some organizations feeling as if they don't need a safety professional in 10 years' time because everything's automated, everything's done with robotics, um, and we've got nothing to worry about from an occupational health and safety um, perspective. So that's I don't think that's going to happen. Um, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility, I suppose, is what I'm thinking. And so, we should be um, considering even sort of quite extreme things like that, I believe, in our minds, as a way of upskilling ourselves, preparing ourselves, and being in a position where we can sort of ride this wave of the changes that are happening, and achieve where the things that we want to by 2035. Martin.
No way is AI going to replace people. And I must have said this 1,000 times. AI is very, very good at creating analytics, taking raw data, disseminating information. But the nuance of being a human being cannot be replaced by algorithms. It never will until it can actually think for itself, and we are a long, long way from it. I think I just want to put on the table, and for those who know me, I live, breathe AI in health and safety. It's never going to replace the health and safety people. But I will say this, health and safety people that don't use AI might find themselves replaced. So it's a combination. Embrace it, work with it, and like I say, when you start bringing in all of these different information, data points, stories, communications, you need a human being to be able to interpret those. And it's not going to be an engineer; it's going to be you guys.
Yeah. I do agree with you, by the way. I was being a little bit facetious about no need for any health and safety people, but I think you're absolutely right that the key thing here is to ride the wave. It's to get on board with this and to be ahead of the curve as much as you can be around this whole technology piece, particularly around AI. Start using it, be familiar with it. You don't want to be sitting in an interview for a job in 3 years' time where the expectation is that you're going to be an AI harnessed head of safety or AI enabled head of safety or whatever the right phraseology is by the person interviewing you, and you haven't got a clue what this whole thing is. You definitely don't want to be in that position. Andrew.
I think looking forward, it's predicting what the mitigation and controls are going to need before you do something. I mean, I, I don't know if you've watched New Mission Impossible, and that's sort of an AI-based thing. You got, and then you
Don't
got
spoil it for me. Don't spoil it for me. I'm planning to watch it in the next week.
Okay, well, you watch it and see what you come out with the end of it. And then, what was the model child toy, the Megan? If you look at the outcome of Megan, if you've seen that one, there's outcomes that I don't know, they're unfathomable for some of us because it's such on a global scale things you can do now and do it from another country. So yeah, from remote viewing and even drones and stuff, the way we're using them at the moment, and nefarious means during warfare and stuff is quite phenomenal now. So there's outcomes and uses for this technology that some people haven't even thought about, I think.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that is always interesting as a predictor of where the world might go is US elections. So from the perspective of kind of marketing to people, communicating and influencing people, and how you can actually leverage technology and sort of get it out there to the world. So you think of, you know, Obama was the first sort of social media president, and that was before the rise of social media. Um, we had the Cambridge Analytica thing. Um, so, it's definitely worth thinking, like looking at like what's in the movies, what's happening in the presidential elections, because that's obviously the most expensive uh, undertaking of anybody doing anything in the world is the US presidential election. So they're going to spend every single last penny on, or cent in their case, on doing whatever they think they can do to get that advantage and leverage the technology. So definitely that's a good way of thinking about what's likely to come. So thanks everybody for joining this session today. I think we covered a lot of ground. I'm sure you'll agree, and I'm happy to take any last contributions if anybody has any, but I'm sure you'll agree that there is change underway, and much more change to come as well. We've tried today to give some perspectives on what that might look like. Obviously, we're guessing, informed opinions, of course, but we don't know for certain. But trying to give a shape of where the world might look like in 10 years' time. And a lot of it, a lot of today is focused on technology. We can all agree that is a big mega trend. So I would say to and repeat what I said earlier, I suppose, that I think what we need to do is, and I'd encourage you to do, is go away and start to, if you're not yet looking at AI, go and learn about it. If you're not yet thinking about being more predictive and preventative through analytics and data, go away and sort of explore what that might look like. I think there's a big opportunity here, and I fully agree with Martin that none of this technology is going to replace us, in my opinion. It's good, but it's going to change what we need to do to fulfill our roles well. So I think the softer skills are going to become increasingly important, but we're also going to have these technical skills around interrogating that data. So I'd encourage you to think about what you can do in those areas to kind of upskill, and as I said earlier, ride the wave rather than be standing on the shore as the wave crashes in. So thanks to everybody for joining today. Enjoyed it. If you've got any suggestions on topics for future events, then do let me know, and do share these events with fellow safety professionals. The more, the merrier. Thanks, everyone.